This episode of The Libby O Show is brought to you by Suite 501 and Integrated Production Solutions.
Hey everybody, my name is Jon McLaughlin. I've had a haircut since this interview, and you're watching The Libby O Show. How does she do it? Libby O.
How did she do it? Do it.
Libby. Oh, oh. Libby. Oh, oh. Libby.
3,
Oh, oh.
2,
Libby.
1.
It's the Libby O Show.
Jon McLaughlin, welcome to the Libby O Show. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Just, doing my thing, trying to figure out this whole quarantine situation like everybody else after month number, what is it, 2 or 3?
What is behind you there? I'm trying to figure out, are those windows? Is that like tinted windows? What is that?
So they're tinted windows. I'm actually in Suite 501 in Franklin.
I've never been there.
Well, if you ever have to rehearse,
Sounds really exclusive.
Oh, it's actually really cool. So I'm in the Fender room. So this is their amp, and they sponsor this particular office meeting room. So they offer spaces for people to write, create content. So yeah, this is my office, I guess. So,
It's cool.
Thanks.
I like it.
So how have you been? I know it's been a very eventful time for everybody, and especially for creatives, figuring out ways to release their projects and everything. So how are you, and how's your family?
I mean, the short answer is we're great. Like it's been a weird time. March 12th or 13th, I started a tour, and we got like 2 shows in, and we just shut it down, which I literally think like the next day was when everything shut down. But by the time we started the tour, it felt a little weird. And then by night 2, it was like, this feels like we shouldn't be doing this. And we were on our way to Madison, Wisconsin. And I was just like, you know what? It was like a moment where I was like, this just feels wrong. And we literally turned around and just headed back to Nashville. And, but it's actually been a really sweet time. And I know that I've talked to a lot of artist friends of mine who feel the same way. And we all say it with the same level of like, is this okay to say, but this has been a great time for my family and I, we wake up and there's no place to go, and we're not rushing off. Like life has just come to a screeching halt, and it's kind of, it's been for our family, it's been a really good time,
That's so great. And I'm sure you've been busy too, creating cooking videos with your daughter.
Right.
They're so great.
Yeah.
They're so cute. So like,
Thank you.
what inspired that? And who does she get her bold personality from? She seems very outgoing.
We don't know. We don't know where that came from. So it started a couple years ago so I have 2 daughters. Luca is our oldest, and then Libby is the youngest. And my wife, Amy, said to me one day, she was like, hey, just FYI, just, the last like 3 stories you posted or whatever were just Luca. So, and she's like, when the girls get older and they look at your, Instagram account, they're going to be like, Libby's going to be like, so what was the deal with me? Did you not love me? Was I not, cute enough? But so I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about it. I got to post a picture of Libby. And so that night I set up my phone and just turned the camera on, and we were making dinner that night. And that was the first little cooking show. And people, I don't think I've got more of a reaction to anything in my musical career than that first cooking show. So, and I think we've done like 17 now. You know, it's not something that we do a ton. We just, every now and then we'll put the phone up and it's fun.
Have, you know, something fun for them to do. And I mean, yeah, she may be on Food Network one day. You never know.
Yeah, this is just my retirement plan.
That's amazing. And then you've also released part 2 of your Mood EP. I guess, are EPs or albums? One or the other, I guess.
Yeah, they're EPs. The first one, I think, is 7 songs. The second one is 6 songs. I should know that, but I actually don't. But I think that's right. Yeah. So yeah, EP.
EP.
Yeah.
So with these different titles and moods, as you call them, did you start with the melody on those in the composition and then think about, oh, this makes me feel ABC? Or did you start with, hey, I want to create this mood in a composition?
The former. They all came. I mean, the only like asterisk to that is some of them didn't come about with a melody necessarily. It was just a mood. Like, and some of them are not very melody driven. They're more just like mood driven.
Yeah.
And so I would write them, and then I would just think like, this makes me visualize spinning, like someone like, you know, I don't know what it's called, where they're like hanging from the rope and they're like just spinning. That's what I visualize when I play that song, spinning, you know. So and I think the first one that I wrote was Haunting.
I love that one.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And it's not, you know, I was like, this definitely feels haunting. And then, you know, the second one was like, it sounds like changing, because it starts out this way and then it morphs into a really different mood. And then I was like, well, I'm just going to call them all ing words. And eventually I'm going to run out of words, but
I mean,
we'll see how long I can go.
Yes, keep going.
Yeah.
Bring us part 3. I will say really quickly, the song Strolling reminded me of, so do you know the Disney movie Great Mouse Detective from like 1986 or 7?
No, I don't.
oh,
I mean, I probably have seen it and just forget about it.
It's based in London, and it was one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. And there's this one scene where this like mouse is playing like a bar piano.
Uh-huh.
it's
I do remember this movie. I'm looking at it right now.
And there's a couple parts in Strolling that like randomly reminded me of that. And it was this like fun, nostalgic childhood moment for me. So
There we go. See?
there we go.
You connected it to a memory. That's great.
when you were creating these 2 EPs, was there any moment when you were like watching a TV show or a film and maybe thought of a song that came from a scene that you watched that created a mood, or have you done that before while creating music?
So let me think of what this song was, because now I'm blanking on which one it is. There's a song on Mood 1 where it came about almost exactly how you just described. Like, Amy and I were watching a movie one night. We're watching Crazy Rich Asians.
That's the best movie ever.
I loved that movie.
So good.
And our neighbor, they were going on a trip like the next day, so they were in like packing mode, and she needed something, so she texted Amy. She was like, "Hey, can you run a duffel bag over or whatever?" So we paused the movie, and it was in some scene that was very emotional. I don't remember the details, but so we paused the movie, and she's like, "Hey, I'm gonna run across the street for 10 minutes." And, you know, this is at night, our girls are asleep, the house is quiet and dark, and I just went over to the piano and sat at the piano. And I can't remember what song it was. I think it was, I have to look at the list. That's crazy that I can't remember. But one of those songs just came out, like,
That's awesome.
fully formed, just this song out of out of an emotion of it. So yeah, that happens a lot, and it especially happens with live shows. Like if we ever go to live shows again, let's say we will. If I'm going to a show where I know it's going to be great, I will, like if I'm going to see Ben Folds, I know that I'm going to leave that show with ideas. So I will just block out time. I'm like, I'm going to go to this show, and at 10:30, 11 o'clock, I'm going to go to the studio and I'm just going to press record and see what happens, because something's going to come from that, because I know I'm going to be inspired, you know.
Has that always been your process, you know, even in these other albums that you've created that are vocal albums, obviously, where you start with that and then work on a lyrical theme that speaks to you?
Yeah, typically the music all comes, for me, all at once. And then the lyric is always tougher. Like I might have a musical idea and a melody and maybe one line or something. And sometimes that line makes no sense, but it just feels so good to sing. And then you have to figure out, what does that line mean? Which could take a couple days, it could take a month. And then one day you connect the dots and you're like, I think I know what that song's about. And then once you have a direction, then the lyrics are kind of fun to write, because you can just sit and put yourself into that story, whether it's something that, you know, is a personal story for me, or if it's a hypothetical thing or about somebody else. It's almost like acting. Like while I'm writing these lyrics, I'm putting myself in this scene and seeing how I feel, and then how do I write that, you know?
Your album Angst and Grace. First, where did the two words angst and grace come from? Like when did you decide this is what's going to encompass everything that this album means to me?
It was about maybe 2/3 the way through the process of writing it, where I felt like there was a theme to the songs that I was writing. Yeah. And it was right after I wrote this song, Oh My Love. And I was like, that song is definitely a grace song. It's all about, it's like prodigal son sort of, you know, angle. And I felt like that every song on that record up until that point was either representing just overwhelming grace. I've got a song for Libby, my daughter, in there, and then I have some songs that are coming from just like the angst of life. So it just, that title came to me, and I
song Lost. I want to talk about that really quickly, because it's one of my favorites. So can you share when that came into the picture and just the process of creating that song for the album?
So I wrote that song when my family and I were in Australia for a month. We have some really good friends who live over there, so we were on a trip visiting with them, and we had a little condo, and I had brought, you know, my little mobile recording rig, which has a tiny little keyboard. Like I'm not traveling with a full piano. Yeah. I've got this tiny little keyboard. So it was a combination of being really limited on what I can play when I'm writing. And also we were listening to a lot of Bleachers at the time, that Jack Antonoff's band. We were just listening to Bleachers all day, every day. I was getting way into that. So in my head, and this is true whenever I write a song, I'm always hearing someone else singing the song. I'm always channeling like Sam Cooke or Jack Antonoff or whatever. And so I to me, when I hear that song Lost, that is a Bleachers song. Like that hook in the chorus, that's not a hook that I ever would have written on my own, but that is a hook that I feel like Jack Antonoff would write. The repetitiveness of it. And so musically, that's where it's coming from. Lyrically, it's a song that, you know, Amy, my wife, and I have been together for, at that time, 15 years or so. So I wanted to write a song that, I've written a ton of love songs about her, but I wanted to write a song that felt like it was a little bit more mature. Like it's the love song that you don't write after the first night. This is after you've been together for, a couple thousand nights,
I love that. And I love hearing that as well. I heard there was someone else, I'm blanking, who was on the show that kind of had that same take. Honestly, I think it was Steve Mokler. It wasn't on my show, but it was something different. He mentioned a similar thing about his recent album being kind of that same tone.
Yeah.
Outside these two amazing EPs, you've got a podcast that you just launched with Dave Barnes called Dadville. So I listened to the second episode that I think that y'all put out where you talk about, what the podcast means and everything and, what came to mind. But can you share more about the perk of having other musicians in the industry as friends who can relate to you in that area and that topic of life, aside from being someone that creates music for the public?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of how Dadville started. Dave and I are neighbors. We live right across the street from each other, and we've known each other for a long time, like almost 20 years now. So we have this, we both have these long careers now. We both have this long friendship, and we both are dads. And so a lot of the common ground that we have revolves around our kids, and we're sort of in step in life right now with all these different milestones. Your kids are born, your kids are going to school for the first time, all that kind of stuff, and juggling a career at the same time. And one of my favorite things about Nashville, aside from the insane talent here that 100% lives up to its reputation, is sort of this community of artists that, we have our things that we do, we've got our careers, but we all have our lives and our spouses and our kids and our vacations and our bills and all that kind of stuff. And there's this really beautiful conversation and community that is happening every day in Nashville. And so, I think we've done maybe a dozen episodes we've taped so far, and we've been really I wouldn't say surprised, but it's been really great to have guests on, because it feels like a slightly different interview than we're all used to doing. And it feels like this thing where it's like no one needs to promote anything, no one needs to
prove themselves.
We're talking about our kids and our family, and it feels like everybody wants to talk about that, and it's kind of this release that our guests have just, taken and run with it. So,
are there any guests that you can mention that are going to be on the show that people can look forward to, or like, is there a place that they can go follow if you're not able to share yet who's going to be on the show?
Yes. So you can go to dadvillepodcast.com. Mm-hmm. Or the Instagram is Dadville Podcast. I think all the socials are Dadville Podcast. I love how shaky I am on all facts that I've been.
It keeps people on their toes. So
you can go to anywhere where podcasts are, iTunes, Apple, whatever, all the Google, whatever. You can subscribe and rate, and that makes a huge difference. And the response in the last 3 days since it's been out has been really, really great.
Love it.
So I can't say what guests we have coming up, but subscribe and you'll
subscribe.
find
And like you said, I did see one of your promo videos, I think it was you that said just put a 5-star. It's easier.
It's so much easier. You don't have to search for should I do 2 stars, or I meant to do 3 stars but I accidentally did 2. Just do the one on the right. You'll get all the stars.
All the stars. Congratulations on Dadville. Congratulations on the 2 EPs. They've been so great to listen to.
Thank
Especially
you.
in times where I need to just calm this up here. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I definitely am in need of that for sure. Like this has come the mood stuff has come at a great time. Obviously, I didn't know there was going to be a worldwide pandemic and shutdown happening, but you always want your music to mean something, and I think the mood stuff, can really, and there's lots of other great music in that genre as well. So we're not all dependent on my mood records, but if my records can provide a little peace and calm for people, that's like means the world to me.
Is there anyone that you've been listening to during this time, or maybe some younger artists that you're rooting for, not only through this season that we're living in, but in their creative future?
Well, we know that I love Ivory Lane.
Yes.
We talked about that earlier. Love her. There is a guy named Jordy Searcy here in town. You know Jordy?
Yes, I do. He's great.
Great. I feel like I'm so rooting for him. I think he's awesome. There's a band called Sawyer who they went out with me in the fall last year. This girl duo, they're great, kind of pop duo. I don't know if they would want me to say pop, folk, rock.
They're in there.
I don't know. They're awesome. So
that's great. And thanks for taking the time to share more about just everything you've been working on. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being on the show.
It's the Libby Show. The Libby Show. It's the Libby Show. It's the Libby Show.